All right, let's talk some OU football. You and I, we had maintained the position that we believed OU was going to be in the SEC in 2024, and maintaining that position paid off, Ted, because it's now official, right? Announcement came late last week. When it finally was made official, what was your reaction, man?
Well, started to hear some stuff from some folks that it was imminent. It was going to be announced in the next, like, really, really soon. So I was excited, man. I'm glad to finally have, a concrete date and time and to make this thing official. And it's not going to be easy, man. There's still a lot of moving parts behind it. There's some dollar figures and moving money around, and all of that stuff is not easy. But to be able to get to a point where everyone can be, at least happy enough to allow this thing to happen a year early, I think it's awesome. And I think it, for the football team, it's been something that Venables has talked about since he accepted the job. And I think it's something that you're going to be able to take to recruits right away, instead of like this distant time where it may happen. You've got a concrete date, and they're going to be able to go to this recruiting class that they've started working on now for the 24 group and say, hey, this is going to be our first SEC freshman class. So I think that's big. I think, you can sit here and talk about the positives all day long. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah. So the big hurdle, it seemed like, was Fox, right? Making them feel like they had been made whole. And when you look at all the reporting about what it took to get done, OU and Texas will forego $100 million of revenue distribution from the Big 12. Reportedly, Fox will get $20 million of that $100 million, and the remaining $80 million will be divided among the 8 remaining members of the Big 12 to kind of pay for the expansion. And then really just one other thing, it seems like Texas is going to travel to Ann Arbor in 2024, and the Wolverines are going to come to Austin in, I believe, 2027. And originally it was supposed to be the opposite. And the reason for that is that game will, in all likelihood, now be played on Fox. So it seems like everyone, from what I can tell, everyone is a winner in this thing. OU and Texas, they're getting what they want. They want to get to the SEC, right? I think we are all OU fans, Texas fans. We're ready for that to happen. We've had enough of the awkwardness, right? And yeah, the level of competition in football is going to ramp up. Everyone knows that, but you got to get there. You got to just rip the Band-Aid off, right? But seems like the Big 12 is pleased with everything that they're getting. And if all Fox needed was $20 million and the Texas Michigan game in 2024, then I guess they feel good about it. It almost seemed like too good of a deal for OU in Texas. When I looked at it, I was like, that's it. All right, good deal. I'm fine with it. Seems very reasonable. That was my initial reaction, was, hey, seems like a pretty good deal for everyone involved.
Yeah, it is. I think there's a bunch of there's a lot of money up front, and it's going to be somewhat painful for University of Oklahoma to be able to, to pony up, right? They got a lot of stuff going on right now, and the expenditures can't really slow down at this point. So it is a little bit interesting there, but the hope is that this move is the TV revenue is obviously, it's a big thing, right? The move to the SEC with what you see in the yearly payout, that's a big deal, but that's only a piece of the story. The amount of money that you're going to be able to create locally, the interest in the football program being back up, helping donations pour in. But the biggest factor, enrollment. If you go to the SEC, you're able to have success on the football field and in other sports. The feeling is that's really going to help enrollment tick up. And some people have forecasted in up to 10,000 in enrollment that they would be able to add. And it doesn't take a whole lot of math to figure out how much more revenue that creates for the university. So there's a bunch of different revenue streams that can come in if this thing goes well. Now, you got to go out, you got to show well, you got to win football games. You can't just end up being another team in the SEC. So we'll see. But I think it's awesome that it's going to happen. As you said, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get this thing done. You know, it had to happen, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, because of the expanded playoff timing and, you know, USC, UCLA going to the Big Ten, that timing. So it's a cleaner transition into, I guess, a new era of college football.
Yeah, it just feels like it lets almost everyone that's a college football fan, like it's all happening at one time. Right? We can all get used to it together. And one of the more interesting things was a report that Brett McMurphy put out there that OU and Texas will actually not get a full share from the SEC in year one, and they'll actually receive less than $40 million, the $40 million they would have received if they would have stayed in the Big 12 for one more year. But I'm sure people hear that and are a little confused, like, why would Oklahoma do that? But it's all about what you just said, Ted. And I think it's pretty simple. OU's willing to do that because they know they're going to make up for it in ticket sales, donations, and you mentioned enrollment. The key is out of state enrollment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Where students are coming from far and wide now because OU is going to be playing SEC football. And I think that the leadership at OU looks at that entire situation and they go, you know what? I think we'll be fine. I think we'll make up that deficit in other ways. And it's really important to keep your fan base happy. And just from some of the feedback that we've got on, you know, from comments on the podcast, comments on YouTube, like OU fans were fed up with being in the Big 12, right? So,
yeah.
So I think that this also it satisfies the fan base, and it gets people really, really excited, not only for when 2024 rolls around, but I think I know it made me more excited for the 2023 season. Like, you know, it's the last year in the Big 12. It's official. And for what it creates a little more buzz knowing that. Just like, okay, this is OU's last season in the Big 12 conference. I don't know. It got my juices flowing a little more for this season.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, I think the share situation is maybe the SEC financing part of that buyout for Oklahoma and Texas. And that's where it's coming from, is that share that they would have gotten. It's maybe pulled from it now, perhaps, and that's going to maybe knock down the number that they've got to come with right away.
Well, when you think about the revenue distribution that OU and Texas aren't taking, a significant portion of that, I imagine, once again, I'm not an expert on all of this stuff, but I know that the TV partners write those big checks, right? Yeah. And that's where a lot of that revenue distribution comes from. So whether you want to say it's coming from ESPN or the SEC or whoever, like that piece that they would be getting from ESPN, they're not taking.
Right.
So I'm sure this is what I know. Joe Castiglione and Joe Harris wouldn't do the deal if it wasn't satisfactory for the University of Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like they've showed some pretty good discipline and patience throughout this entire thing. So I don't think they would do it if they were getting a terrible deal in this whole thing. No. I really don't.
And like we've talked about, there's other streams, and I don't even know what our schedule is going to be next year. And hopefully, I think by May we'll know the format for what they're going to do, whether it's going to be 8, 9, or maybe even 10, as we heard Sankey say, conference games with the SEC, most likely going to be 9, either the 1-8, 1 permanent opponent, 8 rotating, or 3 permanent and 6 rotating. I think we'll know that by May. And whatever it is, whenever you compare what our schedule is this fall compared to what it's going to be next fall, you'll see exactly why they were willing to fork over however much dollars it took to get this thing done, because the amount of interest and money that's going to pour in locally from that is going to be huge.
Yeah. It's gonna be exciting, man. We're gonna have to learn a lot of new stuff.
I know. It's weird.
We found our comfort zone on here, and we're gonna have to like get to know new people from all these different schools to have them onto the podcast. Man, this is gonna take some work for us. Learn all the rosters.
I know it's been too easy, really, whenever you know all of the guys as they rotate through junior, senior. It could be hard to keep it straight with the portal and the COVID year, like who's going to be back and who's not. But yeah, hey, content, right? Easy content, getting up to speed with all of our new conference opponents. So it is a bit daunting, but it's going to be fun.
We'll all learn together, man. It'll be fun. It's gonna be fun, man. I'm so excited.
That would be cool. Do like a little intro podcast for each team, have someone on and just catch us up. What's going on there?
Yeah, like, hey, what do we need to know? You know?
Right.
Like, hey, if our fans are coming to a game there, what do we need to know? What do we avoid? What do we want to do? Like, we'll do a lot of that stuff moving forward, especially once we have that schedule for 2024. But the last thing I wanted to hit with the SEC news, did you see Switzer's comments in the Tulsa World?
Yeah, I did.
He's the best, man. I mean, we got to get the king on here. I know that we've been saying that for a while, but I think I don't think anyone that knows Barry Switzer, the man speaks his mind. Like there's no doubt about that. But I saw what he said, and here's some of the quotes. Quote, "I'm concerned. I know what it'll look like. It'll look like we're playing Texas every bleeping week." He also added, "You've got to be good. I don't know if we're good enough right now. We'll have to get better on defense." Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone, I was surprised that people were surprised by what Barry said, because, I mean, we just saw this program struggle in the Big 12. The SEC is the best conference in all of college football. Yet you got to get better. The roster has to improve. We've been talking about this, like the overall level of talent on the roster. It just has to get better. So I was surprised that some people had such a strong reaction to the King's comments. I don't know why. It's like, yeah, duh, you have to get better. I don't know why people had such a strong reaction to that.
Well, I don't know. I think
is it because he almost made it sound like going to the SEC is a bad idea? Like that's how it kind of comes off.
Yeah, it did, because one of the other quotes was, in a couple of years I'm gonna be asking, whoever is responsible for this move, raise your hand, right? And I think I agree with pretty much everything that he says. I mean, you do have to get better. You got to get way better on defense. We got to get better on offense. There's not a portion of our team that doesn't have to get better. It is going to be more difficult. The schedule's going to be more grueling. We're going to be playing teams that look like Texas as far as what the athletes on the other sideline are going to be looking like. Absolutely. I guess my difference is I think that Oklahoma is going to rise to the occasion. I think the future is bright. I think that this is going to give us the juice, the energy that the program's needed, a new challenge, right? So I'm excited for it. And I believe that we're going to be saying in a couple of years, raise your hand, who's responsible for this move? Let us know, because it's been amazing. That's what I think.
I truly believe this. I don't think a Big 12 team is ever going to win another championship in college football. And that may be, maybe I end up being wrong about that, right? We just saw TCU playing the national title game. But we all saw TCU playing the national title game and what it looked like against Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I think because the standard for this program is not to get close. It's to go win the whole damn thing. And as we continue to watch, see Bama and Georgia, those types of team up close, Ted, it became very clear to you and I. Now, whether we said it out loud on the radio broadcast or not, that's a different story. It became very clear how wide the gap was, and that the gap was continuing to get wider. And I think if the standard for Oklahoma football is to win the whole damn thing, this was the move that had to be made. It had to be made. And are there going to be some rough patches and some down seasons? Absolutely. Right? That's going to be life in the SEC. But I think there are also going to be some high points. And this move, if Oklahoma football wants to win a national title, it's what you had to do. Because making this move and being able to go to these top recruits around the country and say, hey, we play in the best conference in all of college football. You'll get to play against the other best players in college football, and you'll get drafted high in the NFL draft. I don't know. I wish Barry would have said something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the damn truth, man. I really don't think, especially with what the Big 12 is going to look like once OU and Texas leave, I find it very hard to believe, especially with an expanded playoff. That's also something I wish Coach Switzer would have mentioned. Like, hey, this thing, it's about to get harder. You got to win 3 games now, not 2.
Yeah.
To win the whole damn thing. And in order to do that, you got to run through Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. It seems like USC is headed towards that level as well. Like, that's what it's going to take. You got to have the level of talent and the depth on your roster and the coaching and everything in place to run through that grind. We'll never know, but I don't think OU is going to do that as a member of the Big 12 Conference. And
No.
that's not to put any doubt on Coach Venables or that staff or the program as a whole. The gap was wide, man. It was wide, and this is how you close the gap.
Yeah. Well, if you think about, just kind of look at the transition. So, what was the first year of the Big 12? Was it 96?
96 or 97, right?
Yeah. So you had Nebraska won a championship in 97. Oklahoma won it in 2000. Nebraska played in it in 01. Oklahoma played in it in 03 and 04. Texas played in it and won it in 05. Big 12 was right there in the mix in the early 2000s, every single year, right?
What would you know about that, dude? Come on.
And a lot of people at the time said the Big 12 was the best conference in college football during that time. Well, since the last time a Big 12 team has won a championship, there's been 5 SEC teams win championships, and I think 4 of the 5 have won multiple championships since then. So that's where it is right now. And the move in 12, the realignment in 12 made the conference weaker. It made it more difficult to get back there. And, TCU made it back, but I don't think there's anyone out there that realistically believes that. I'm not saying it's a fluke that TCU made the national championship, but in my opinion, it's a one-off year, right? I don't expect TCU to all of a sudden become like a Clemson. I don't think that that's going to happen. So it had to happen. If you want to win a national championship, you had to be a part of the SEC because of all the benefits that comes with it. It's not just money, it's recruiting, it's perception of what your program is. Like, all the SEC teams use the fact that Oklahoma and Texas were in the Big 12 against us in recruiting. If you go to this school, just look at the draft numbers, look at the NFL. The players are coming from the SEC. They're not coming from the Big 12, especially on defense. That's where they started to kill us in recruiting. And that perception became reality. And that reality, you can love a school all you want, but if your chances to go to the NFL are this much greater if you go to an SEC school, that's where you're going to go.
I'm with you, man. The program, the roster, it may not be good enough right now, but making this move was the only way that they're going to get good enough.
Yep.
So I love Coach Switzer. I saw a lot of strong reactions to all his comments, but I continue to maintain that this was pretty much the only way for OU to try and win another national championship. Like, I know they got close a couple years, but the expanded playoff is also one thing I think people continue to maybe ignore a little bit. Like, the game has changed, man. I mean, it is changed. So the move is coming, Ted. We know we can mentally prepare now. There's a lot of football to be played in 2023, and we are going to attack that season with a lot of excitement. But SEC's coming, man.
It's coming, and I think our roster is going to be in a good spot. Do I think that we're going to all of a sudden come in 24 and win the SEC in the first year? I mean, I don't think it's likely, but I don't think it's ridiculous. I think our roster today is drastically better than it was a year ago today. And a year from now, it's going to be better than it is at this moment. And I fully believe that. And it's already good. When you look at the rankings of our athletes, the guys on our sideline, I know the results have not been good recently, but there's good players there that need development and are getting development. We have a much higher ceiling with the players on our roster than some other places, but it needs to continue to improve, and I think it will.
Yep. I'm with you. I want to get your thought on one thing. I made a bet with Holly Rowe a while back, right when the OU and Texas to the SEC news got leaked by A&M. I have $1,000 bet with her that OU will win the SEC in its first 10 years in the league. I feel very good about that. Now, it's not going to be easy. How do you feel about my position in that wager? All they have to do is win the league just once in the Sooners' first 10 years in the league in football.
Yeah, I think that's yes. If they don't win it in the first 10 years, they'll never win it.
Okay. So I don't know if that made me feel better or not, but here we are. I feel good about it. It's just like it's $100 bet each year. That's the way I look at it.
I think it'll happen a lot faster than that.
I like that.
Well,
now you're making me feel better.
Well, here's the thing. Like, you have to take advantage of
the bump.
You're going to get a massive influx of attention on the program. The fan base is going to be coming in. Donations are going to ramp up. Recruiting's going to ramp up. You have to take advantage of all that when you have the opportunity. And that's when it's going to be, that's whenever you're going to have your best chance to win the SEC. is right away. If you don't take advantage of all that whenever it happens in that big burst, it's way more difficult to do it incrementally. Ask Tennessee, ask Florida, ask anyone that's had to try and rebuild from the ground up after they've lost that big wave of momentum. It's not nearly as easy.
I hear you.